A common debate amongst scholars and believers is whether or not angels possess free will, whether they can act independently from God and even sin. Various interpretations across the major religions of the world seem to disagree. In mainstream Catholicism, for example, angels are created with free will, as demonstrated in the account of Isaiah and the account of Revelation, where we see Lucifer and his angels rebel against God. According to broader Christian theology, angels are given something of a probationary period after their creation, where they can choose to rebel or can choose to obey. Those who remain loyal become permanently good and incapable of sin, whilst those who rebel, like Satan, become permanently evil and very much capable of sin. In Jewish thought, meanwhile, angels are primarily messengers of God, those who exist as extensions of his will, not necessarily as independent beings with free agency. Some rabbinic views suggest that angels are created for specific tasks and cannot act outside of that purpose. Yet the Talmud and various midrash do contain discussions about whether angels can choose to disobey. For example, there exist interpretations of Genesis 6:1-4 where the sons of God, who take human wives, could be dissenting angels that act against God's will, those who we'll discuss in more detail later. In Islamic theology, angels, the Malaika, are created from light and thus completely obedient to God. Unlike humans or jinn, who are created with free will, angels do not have the ability to choose between good and evil. They simply act according to God's commands without deviation, and therefore are believed to be wholly good. Whether or not an angel can act with their own intentions, therefore, is dependent on one's beliefs. Yet if we were to consult the first Book of Enoch, we see that angels, at least a specific group of angels known as the Watchers, become infatuated with the mortal women on the earth, and go as far as to court them, seduce them, and impregnate them. These angels are believed to evidently act independently from God, and not only disobey him, but succumb to their own desires and impulses, as if they were human themselves. It's with no particular difficulty that we can determine that these particular angels, these Watchers, did possess free will. How else would they be able to execute such diabolical plans? The question that does remain, however, is why did God allow this to transpire? Before employing the age-old adage of God working in mysterious ways, it might be worth considering some of the ideas as to why God essentially turns a blind eye to the happenings on the earth when his Watchers fell from the heavens. For those unaware of the Enochian legend, we are told by chapter 7 of the book that a specific group of angels, known as Watchers, of whom there were 200 in total, could not resist the beauty of the mortal women on the earth. Together they took these mortal women and made unto themselves wives, where they began to not only defile them, but also taught them charms, enchantments, and forbidden magics. By chapter 8, we see that it wasn't enough for the angels to corrupt the mortal women by enjoying their flesh, but they also went as far as to further demerit them by educating them in affairs that God had obviously not wanted them to know. It's no stretch to say that these angels ruined the mortal women, sullying their bodies and defaming their character to the point that they were no longer congruent with God's image. Worse yet, the women became pregnant and gave birth to monstrous giants known as the Nephilim, violent creatures that devour all the animals of the land, and then even mankind itself. Yet still, with all this going on, God does not intervene. In fact, an argument can be made that God didn't even consider it to be that big of a deal until the archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, direct his attention toward it. In chapter 9, we see that it is not God who even notices the antics of the Watchers, nor the destruction by the Nephilim, but rather the archangels, who alert God, telling him, "And they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins." Indeed, the way in which they make this declaration, by providing all the details, makes it seem like God was completely ignorant of the events that were transpiring. They go into some length about the giants too, explaining how the earth has been filled with blood, and how there are souls who have died and are crying because of the lawlessness that is wrought on the earth. Yet despite all this, they conclude their sentiment by recognizing that "thou knowest all things before they come to pass, and thou seest these things, and thou dost suffer them, and thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these." With this, it can be further argued that God did not know about what the Watchers had done upon the earth, but that he just wasn't really all that bothered, nor prepared to do anything about it just yet. The statement by the archangels here comes across as almost accusatory, as they tell him, "Thou dost suffer them." Indeed, he lets it happen, even though it was not a part of his plan, and was something of a mockery of what he had originally intended. Some might say that the archangels themselves border on the verge of heresy by questioning God at all, or by indirectly accusing him of inaction by not having sent them to intervene. By this sentiment, the archangels may have pondered on the same questions we are now pondering on in this episode. Why did God allow the Nephilim to run riot? Why did he allow the Watchers to reveal their secrets? And better yet, why did God allow the angels to seduce the mortal women in the first place? One possible explanation aligns with the Catholic belief that God grants free will not only to humans, but also to angels. Just as Adam and Eve were given the freedom to obey or disobey God's commands in the Garden of Eden, the Watchers may have possessed the same ability to choose between obedience and rebellion. Adam and Eve's choice led to their expulsion from the garden, just as the Watchers' actions resulted in their own downfall. Similarly, Satan himself is described as a once righteous being, who chose to rebel against God. Once more, if Lucifer and his followers were given the ability to reject God's authority, it is reasonable to assume that the Watchers had the same autonomy, which they ultimately misused. However, if we go by the Archangel's words in chapter 9 of Enoch, we understand that God knew the Watchers were going to transgress. He knew they were going to fall for the women, and he knew all the events that would later transpire on the earth. Yet this leads some to believe that God was still willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and to give them a chance. Throughout the Bible, God frequently tests individuals to reveal their faithfulness and obedience. For example, Abraham was tested when God commanded him to sacrifice his son Isaac. Job was tested through intense suffering to prove his righteousness. Even the Israelites in the wilderness were tested to see if they would follow God's commandments in Deuteronomy 8:2. In a similar way, the Watchers may have been placed in a position of authority over humanity as a test of their obedience to God's will. Instead of fulfilling their divine duty, they failed, succumbing to their desires and corrupting the natural order, proving that in this tradition, even angelic beings could fall when faced with temptation. The actions of the Watchers did not occur in isolation. They led to widespread corruption on the earth. Beyond their seduction of the mortal women, they revealed to mankind the secrets of heaven. They taught them witchcraft and sorcery, and perhaps worst of all, they taught men how to wage war. This was the groundwork for the whole world turning wicked, the blueprint that altered the course of mankind, pivoting it away from peace and righteousness and toward chaos and sin. This mirrors the corruption seen in Genesis 6:5-7, where God observes that humanity has become exceedingly wicked, prompting him to send the flood as judgment. In some interpretations, this account in Genesis is the culmination of the events found here in the Book of Enoch. The Bible often depicts sin reaching a tipping point before divine intervention occurs. For example, in Genesis 18:20 through 21, God tells Abraham that he will judge Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin has become very grave. In the same way, the actions of the Watchers and their offspring may have been allowed to unfold so that their wickedness would be fully exposed before judgment was delivered. This can be further explored in Genesis 15:16, where God tells Abraham that he will not yet judge the Amorites because the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. Such a pattern suggests that divine justice operates on a timeline that is not always immediately apparent to humanity. You might say that the Watchers' actions may have been permitted for a time so that their corruption could be fully realized, and therefore could receive the maximum sentence as dished out by God. This would explain why God did not intervene immediately, but allowed their rebellion to unfold before enacting justice through the means of sending his archangels to apprehend them, and then the flood to drown their children. Many biblical stories serve as cautionary lessons, teaching future generations the consequences of disobedience. The fall of Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, the punishment of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19, and the exile of Israel due to idolatry in 2 Kings all serve as warnings to others. The Watchers' rebellion and its catastrophic consequences could have been preserved in the same manner as a cosmic lesson, demonstrating the dangers of stepping beyond divinely established boundaries. Just as the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a warning against wickedness, the fate of the Watchers serves as a warning to both humans and celestial beings about the consequences of rebelling against God's order. Indeed, believers might acknowledge the notion that one might get away with wicked behavior for a time, but in the long run, offenders will be punished accordingly. According to the Tree of Myths, a collection of Jewish tales by folklorist Howard Swartz, we are introduced to another idea known as the evil inclination, which was believed to be an almost supernatural urge that tempts all creatures on the earth to do bad things. By this narrative, God warns the angels that whilst they would not suffer from the evil inclination in the heavens, they would experience it if they went down to the earth. To this, the angels are confident that they would not fall victim to such a sensation, and were certain that even if they were tempted, they would not suddenly change teams and start doing wicked things. Yet when they descend upon the earth and first encounter humanity, they are almost immediately overcome by the beauty of the women. The evil inclination is awoken within them, and they very quickly find themselves forgetting about their angelic status and their closeness to God in favour of seducing the wives of men and stealing them for themselves. In some Jewish traditions, this evil inclination was known as Yetzer Hara, which essentially embodies the congenital inclination to do bad things. Angels, by this logic, were just as fallible as us, if not more so, considering that the moment they get down to earth, they immediately get suckered by the first woman they see. Despite the apparent chaos caused by the Watchers, the overarching biblical message is that God remains in control. In the Genesis story of Joseph, for example, his brothers sell him into slavery, but Joseph later tells them, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Similarly, even when humanity sinned and crucified Jesus, God used it to bring salvation to the world, as seen in Acts 2:23 through 24. These examples show that even in situations of rebellion and sin, God can use circumstances to fulfill his ultimate plan. The fall of the Watchers may have introduced destruction, but it ultimately played a role in the unfolding of God's greater purpose, whether that be the purification of the earth through the flood, or setting the stage for the eventual redemption of humanity. By this logic, it might be said that the mortal women became casualties of a greater purpose. They are, to be crude, collateral damage, victims of a necessary evil that eventually gave birth to a new world more in line with the creator's intentions. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to leave this video a like and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.